What's up guys, LeopoldTheBrave here, and today we're discussing something people have wanted me to make a video on for ages. And it's admittedly a little strange people have requested this video so much because the Crash Bandicoot timeline is actually pretty straightforward, games releasing in chronological order. With exceptions of a couple games, like the handhelds. So in this video, I'll be discussing the Crash Bandicoot timeline and going over all the games, while branching and filling in the gaps in between them, because after the original trilogy, all the games sort of felt like episodic cartoons that had little to do with each other. There is bound to end up being a plot hole or two somewhere, so forgive me for that, I'm trying the best I can. With that said though, let's begin. Our story begins in a dark setting. Our anthropomorphic hero, Crash Bandicoot, has been taken from his home and experimented on by the evil Dr. Neo Cortex. This mad doctor plots to grow an army of super mutant animal soldiers. But things aren't quite going according to plan. While his Evolvo Ray works fine and gives Crash superhuman physical characteristics, like improved speed and strength, the Cortex Vortex, which is supposed to put him under Cortex's control, instead scrambled his brains and turned him into the wild marsupial we know today. Crash escaped, and that likely would have been the end of it, except Cortex also had Crash's girlfriend Tana captured. His brains weren't too scrambled to forget about his darling, so he rushes back to save her, thwarting Cortex's plans in the process. We then come to Crash Bandicoot 2, which begins immediately after the last adventure as Cortex falls from his airship. He happens to land in a dark mine where he discovers power crystals, which hatches another scheme in that giant head of his. Plotting to use the power of these crystals to enslave the entire planet at once with an upgraded Cortex Vortex, he realizes he has no minions left to collect the power crystals for him. So he obtains the help of an enemy, Crash Bandicoot, by tricking him into thinking the power crystals would be used to protect the planet from an astral cataclysmic event. However, thanks to several warnings from his sister, Coco, who exists now, and threats from Cortex's former assistant Nitrous Brio, Crash doesn't fall for Cortex's schemes. He instead thwarts Cortex's plots once again by teaming up with Embryo and shooting the Cortex Vortex out of the sky. This leads us into Crash 3 as we see the Cortex Vortex crashing down into a mysterious temple. This temple, though, is actually a prison, holding in Uka Uka, the evil twin brother of the mask Aku Aku who has been helping Crash throughout his journeys thus far. Uka Uka reveals that Cortex had been working for him all along as he oversees Cortex's next plot. With the help of a new henchman, Dr. Nefarious Tropy, Uka Uka and Cortex plot to go back in time, or forward in time, to collect crystals as no more exist in the present. And you'll never guess who saves the day once again. That's right, it's Crash Bandicoot. They don't just save the day though, they actually find a way to defeat Cortex for good? With the power of the crystals and the gems, they're able to shut down Entropy's time room. This creates a massive black hole that sucks everything in, including Cortex and Aku Aku and Entropy, turning them into babies as they find themselves in some unknown location. And this is where we can fit the first Game Boy Advance title, Crash Bandicoot: The Huge Adventure. While there's no direct bridge connecting it to the previous title, it's pretty safe to assume that Uka Uka did eventually get free from the grasp of the babies and turn them back to normal. Not much happens in this game anyways, it's just another failure of Dr. Cortex. He and Uka Uka shrink the planet, for some reason, and Crash collects crystals, defeats bosses, goes around the world, and gets it back to normal. This game could honestly fit just about anywhere in the timeline, you could even stick it at the end, but I'll just put it as early as I possibly can. After this, everyone just seems to take a break, laying low. Until suddenly, in Crash Team Racing, yes it's canon, nitrous oxide appears and threatens to turn the entire planet into a giant parking lot if nobody can defeat him in a race. So all the world's forces, no matter how much they can't stand each other like Crash and Cortex, work together to find out who is good enough to challenge nitrous oxide. And there's no canon winner, so it can honestly be whoever you want. Crash, Cortex, Dingodile, Polar. But with Oxide gone, that little adventure had motivated the villains to get back to their plans as we come to Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. Uka Uka is very upset with his minions because their rates of spreading evil is extremely low, likely due to helping Crash stop Oxide. And when coming to terms with the fact that they just can't succeed in their plans with Crash in the way, they decide to hatch a plan that'll target Crash directly. Cortex creates a new Bandicoot super soldier named Crunch and powers him, keeping him under control with a mysterious new gang of masks called the Elementals. As usual though, Crash defeats Cortex and even befriends Crunch as he breaks him out of the Elemental's control. Out of anger over another failure, Uka Uka tries to attack Cortex, who dodges but causes the space station to get hit instead, bringing them down as they crash land in the Arctic while Crash and the gang escape. 3 years later, we come to Crash Twinsanity as Cortex thaws out from his Arctic vacation and builds an iceberg lab down there, while also sealing away Uka Uka in an ice prison as he's still frozen. Now that Cortex is on his own for the very first time without some higher up commanding him from behind the scenes, he goes a little crazy with his next scheme. He tricks and lures our hero Crash into an ambush filled with all of his past enemies like Ripperoo, Dingodile, Oxide. See, told you CTR was canon. But things go horribly wrong and Crash and Cortex find themselves in some extremely cartoony situations, eventually ending up on a beach where they come across Cortex's old pet parrots, Victor and Moritz, now mutated from the 10th dimension that Cortex accidentally sent them to in one of his first experiments of the Evolvo Ray as a child. Victor and Moritz wish to exact their revenge on Cortex by swapping out their dimensional versions of Wumpa Island, so Crash and Cortex would be stuck with the bad and evil Wumpa Island from Victor and Moritz's new dimension, while Victor and Moritz would get the good Wumpa Island from this current dimension. Yeah, it got pretty wacky, but I love it. Anyways, Crash and Cortex save the day, defeating the evil twins and returning home. Also, Cortex accidentally zaps himself inside of Crash's brain. I don't know how that happened, I have no clue how he got out. I guess Aku Aku or Uka Uka did it. Either way, I'm sure it was just for a gag and had no real story significance. But then we come to Crash Nitro Kart. That's right, Crash Nitro Kart can't really fit in the timeline until after Twinsanity, because Cortex and Uka Uka were frozen between Wrath of Cortex and Twinsanity. Anyways, our heroes and villains are minding their own business when suddenly they're sucked into space and brought into some giant coliseum. Emperor Velo reveals himself and threatens to destroy the Earth if our favorite Crash Bandicoot characters don't race for their entertainment. He modifies their Earth vehicles in order to withstand alien terrain and zero gravity. Oxide even participates representing Gazmoxia to further connect it to Crash Team Racing, helping it be canon. And we know how the story goes. Our racers win the competition, defeat Velo, he promises to leave their Earth alone, and they get to have a happily ever after. Yay! That is until we come to Crash of the Titans. Our heroes are minding their own business until Cortex shows up and reveals he has a weaponized version of the Evolvo Ray, so he can basically just shoot animals into mutation. He plots to create an army of these mutants to help him build a gigantic Doombot that'll destroy Wumpa Island and help him enslave the entire world. However, the very first moment his plans even begin to start falling apart, Uka Uka instantly replaces him with his niece, Nina Cortex. But surprise surprise, these mutant plans backfire as Crash, with the help of Aku Aku, is able to possess and take control of these mutants for himself. And as you guessed it, they defeat Nina. While Cortex is proud of Nina's evil, he is still bitter that it was towards him, and has her shipped off to evil public school in the next game, Crash Bandicoot Mind Over Mutant. Cortex actually pulls some brand new super sneaky moves in his next plot. He reunites with his old assistant Nitrous Brio and even betrays Uka Uka, trapping him and milking him for his energy to fuel their next device. These devices are the Google Glass, NV helmets. They are disguised as super marketable and consumer-friendly products, but in actuality, they're mind control and mutation helmets. They could possess and mutate anyone who wears them, just like Crash could do with Aku Aku to the mutants in the previous game. But anyways, since Cortex stepped on so many people on his way back up, like Uka Uka and Nina, Crash and Aku Aku were able to enlist their help in bringing Cortex back down. And it worked. He was defeated once again, and Brio even split up with him once again. And you may think that's the end of the timeline, as that was the last major main story Crash game released, but you can actually fit 2 more games at the end: Crash Tag Team Racing and Crash Bandicoot Entranced, the second game on the Game Boy after the huge adventure. In Crash Tag Team Racing, we see Cortex present without Uka Uka. And in Crash Entranced, we see Uka Uka present without Cortex. They're still split up. This is where these 2 games can fit. You can put them in either order you want, but both games fit best after Crash Bandicoot Mind Over Mutant. So this is where we left off and where the next new Crash Bandicoot game can pick up on. The Bandicoots are going about their daily lives, everything's normal, and Cortex is on his own for the very first time. No Uka Uka, no Brio, no Nina. So let's see where they go with that. How will this mad scientist do completely by himself? But anyways, I hope you enjoyed my video. Let me know what you think of my timeline down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. LeopoldTheBrave, out.